this afternoon, we're beginning with really the central issue. The central issue. These are folks who have worked with this all-important migrant population. And I didn't get to it, with my presentation, but the focus on migrant workers is, of course, vital. We're talking about a migration that that this planet has never before seen. Hundreds of millions of people moving from the countryside to various cities. And we're talking about a population that's now exposed in different ways to different influences. One of the things that I got out of reading an early publication on this project, maybe 2014, the survey, was the number of unplanned, unwanted pregnancies among women migrants. And it was really 30%, so really quite high. And that speaks to issues of education, gender inequality, all sorts of different questions. And they have gone into this. And what Linda Neuhauser and what Eve Wenjing Li have done is that they're using this truly dynamic approach that others have latched onto and are learning from, recognizing that health is not just the province of the medical doctors and not just the doctors in one particular field, but it takes a more holistic approach, this transdisciplinary approach that they have adapted for use in China. It's really quite amazing what they have already done. And I anticipate learning a lot from this presentation. One of the things that some reference was made earlier was the large portion of diabetes sufferers who live in China. If you have diabetes, you're probably Chinese, statistically. 1 out of 3. And so focusing on these kinds of questions, getting at what this population needs. And it's not just an old story, because China still plans to move another couple 100 million people to cities. So the demand for healthcare is only going to increase. And it's not to be met just by healthcare professionals, but by people taking this transdisciplinary, multidisciplinary approach. I look forward to learning a lot, and I hope that you'll join me in welcoming our presenters.
Okay, I'm very excited to be here and with many of my partners to present this activity programs in China. And then this is the awareness project for migrant workers. So in this partnership, we have me, Linda, and then we also have another partner from Pathfinder, Sono, Abby. And then we also have another 2 professors from UC Berkeley, one from sociology, social welfare, and the other from school public health. And we also have 4 other our Chinese colleagues in Changzhou and in Nanjing. So this whole team, we have a research, we have a technical assistant, we have working with the government, as our partners. So it's a very comprehensive project. So this afternoon, we are going to talk about first the background and the history, and then we will talk about the issue, and we will talk about how we approach those issues and where are the interventions, and then we will show you a very short video, 5 minutes, which is to document the whole process. Then we get to, and then Linda will lead a small group exercise, and she will lead that, and people will exercise how we do it as participatory approach. And then we'll come back to the film, come back to the slides. We'll talk about this, what have we achieved, and what are the challenges, and the next step. Okay, so this is how we're going to do this afternoon. And we jointly represent, it's like a playing show, like talk show. Okay,
And we'll have our colleagues, Sono, Aibe, just say whatever you think when that comes up.
And I want to say, Sono from Pathfinder is our initial funding. And then, and so we start this line of work in China. And we have Berkeley join us, and we have Asia Foundation, and we also have Levi's Foundation join us to carry out. So since 2011, so this project is still going on in China. Yeah.
Good afternoon, teachers. Yes. Is everybody happy? No one's falling asleep? Yes, you in the back. Yes? Happy? Happy. Okay. We're so glad to be here, and as teachers, don't we have a great job? So we're going to have a lot of fun today. We're not going to fall asleep. We're going to be doing some exercise, like Eve said. We're going to have some really great stories of things that we've been learning and sharing in China. I think some of this will be able to be translated to your classrooms. So first, just a little word about us. We're both at UC Berkeley, and we're at a center in the School of Public Health called Health Research for Action. And you have to do the fist bump because we are about action. Now, many of us talk about universities. You've all heard this. Those of you who are at universities, I'm looking right now at Mark. I can look at Clayton too. You've heard about the ivory tower, where they just do research, and that's all that happens. It doesn't really affect the community. So we set up a center to do something else, to not only do research, but to do action that would really impact the community. And we decided to do this in a different way than you usually see at universities. So our center has a mix of researchers and community practitioners and people who are communication specialists and others. We all work together on problems. One of the things that we focus on is participation. So whatever problem we're looking at, we make sure that the people affected by that are sitting with us at all times to co-think about it, to co-design, to co-implement, and to co-evaluate. So we are now the communiversity, not the ivory tower. We have partnerships with all kinds of communities, probably thousands of people around the world. And we also work with government and foundations and the private sector and so forth. And as it says here, we translate research into practice. But actually what we really do is we create research with the participation of the community from the beginning, which is a much better way to do research. So we're going to talk about projects today with migrant workers. Now, migrant workers are actually residents of China. The reason they're called migrants, unlike people, let's say, in our country, is that they do not have residence in the place where they're working. So Clayton just mentioned that we have this huge, the largest demographic transition in the history of the world is taking place, with 244 million and growing rapidly, people coming from more of the rural areas into the urban economic zones. And this is just absolutely huge. If you think of the United States and you take 2/3 of our population, and in a short period of time you move 2/3 of that population to other places, you can imagine the dislocation that would be happening and the impacts of that. So these are very vulnerable people. They generally have lower education levels, like maybe 7th grade, but some people we're working with have just a few years of education. So it really varies quite a bit. Because they have moved from the rural villages, they don't really have the life skills that one needs and that we take for granted to live in, let's say, an urban environment. They don't have their social network, their usual traditional protections, and they don't know a lot about their rights because that was never really an issue in the places where they lived. And one of the big issues is that they're not registered in the place where they work. If you don't have a residency, your registration in the place that you work, then in China, you're not eligible for a lot of services. For example, if you moved from here to Oakland and you found out, oh, you can't get health care and your children can't go to these schools anymore because you're actually a resident of San Mateo, you'd be thinking, whoa. Anyway, that's what's happening there. It's a very big issue, very hard to change. There is a tremendous need there for comprehensive information on all kinds of issues for these workers. And this was an excellent time for us to go. And one of the reasons that we ended up starting on this work when we did was because the Chinese government has recognized the importance of this giant dislocation of the population and all the problems. And so they made it one of the major goals of their current plan is to support the migrant workers. And what they're looking for is innovative social management approaches. And this is something that we are working on ourselves. Now, this is all good that this is a big goal of China, but they have put billions into these projects to support migrant workers, but most of them have not worked. And so we're going to talk about that right now. How come billions of dollars and all the goodwill they had towards trying to find an approach to support workers, how come that's not working? So there are many reasons, but two reasons that we are focused on is that as teachers, we know that how you frame a problem will determine how you're going to solve it. So there, when they framed the problem of the health of migrant workers, they framed it as a problem of lack of access to health services. And they really did not look at all the other factors that affect people's health. The second thing is they followed the more traditional top-down approach of having leaders design the projects without the participation of workers or many other stakeholders that you would need to really understand something and come up with something that works. So top-down approach. And we often see that in this country. The top-down approach is widespread here too. So just to talk about the determinants of health, one of the things in public health that we talk about is something called the determinants of health. And actually one of our colleagues, Len Syme, is the person who came up with this term that's now used worldwide. And the determinants of health means all the factors that affect health. We can also call that wellness. So if we look at this slide here, we can see that if you want to know what affects people's health, it's first and foremost social factors in their environment and their behavior. So that's about 50% of it. Genetics, maybe about 20%. The environment, about 20%. And then if you look at healthcare, that is a tiny 10%. So if you frame the problem of health and public health among migrant workers as access to healthcare, you're looking at 20% and not at 90%. So we aim to change that in the kind of work we're doing. So now we're not going to zoom in on
the
Google Earth.
Google map.
But you can imagine yourself flying in here too.
Okay.
Mark, did that seem realistic?
Okay, so this is the map of Jiangsu. Have everybody been to Jiangsu province before? Shanghai, yeah, yes, okay. This is how to point this one out. Anyway, so the red one, this is the Changzhou city. This is the Shanghai, and this is Nanjing. Why I point on Nanjing? Because Nanjing was the capital before the ROC, which is the Republic of China, moved to Taiwan. So in China, it's a big city between just halfway, Nanjing and Shanghai. And Changzhou is one of the 52 national economic development zone. So it's a mature development zone. And then about 1/4 of the population of the Changzhou city are migrants. And people are coming all over for the working in the manufacturing, working in the zone. Yeah. So that's why we started this project as there, because migrant worker, as Linda laid out, and this morning 2 speakers laid out, is a big issue in China. They are everywhere. And then initially we want to work something to help the migrant. I said, well, they are everywhere. We couldn't just have the China spread out the work everywhere. We just focus on the more confined area, which is the zone. So we started a pilot site in the Changzhou. And next one.
Here, just, this is forward, and that's back.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Okay, so I just mentioned. And then so what is Awareness Project? Linda just laid out the definition of awareness, but what is Awareness Project? As I say there, it's an innovative project. It's an empowerment project. It's a really engaged migrant worker who are the one you are supposed to serve. So we work as a partnership. And this program is to improve their health, to raise awareness, and find out what are the factors to affect their health, and what are the issues, and what are the solutions. So the whole thing is a health promotion, and then to improve their well-being, and also to improve the whole society. So this is how we define the Awareness Project. Yeah. And we use a highly participatory approach, which we will explain what does that mean. And then working in China for the past 20-some years, I find out if the project wants to be successful, you must have lots of partners. You cannot just work with a certain group, like a researcher, or you're just working with a practitioner. You want to have lots of people on the table, and then to solve the problem together. Because then eventually you can change the policy, you can improve people's life. So in this particular projects, we're working with the government, we're working with NGO, we're working with academic research, and we're also working with the most important is workers and the factory. Because if the factory doesn't buy this project, you couldn't have this one sitting in their factory. Yeah. So we have lots of partners. And also we make it very clear, everybody owns this project. We are just the foreign people, okay? We provide technical assistance, but the ownership is the local people. It's whoever working with us. It's equal ownership. Actually, that works because everybody thinks, oh, this is my project. My experience working in China for so long ago is lots of projects, when out people come to China, foreigner, they say, this is my project. So they find lots of local people to work with them, and everybody thinks, I just work for them. I work for UN. I work for other foundations. They never think they own this project. So what that end up with is when money finished, the project finished. Okay, everybody happy, go home. And the project doesn't sustain and doesn't scaling up. So at the beginning, for this project, we said, okay, everybody own the project. Your local government, this is your project. And the researcher, this is your project. And we work together. And this strategy works. And Sono, working in a developing country for all over the world, she probably can tell you this strategy works. Mm-hmm. So we emphasize from the beginning, it's an equal partnership. Everybody owns that, And then we use a very, very highly participatory approach, which is in every process, and later on we will show you, how we engage worker, how we engage the factory. And then definitely worker is a person we work with, and then it's an empowerment to them. And also from the beginning, we have a research area designed from the beginning. Also, many international projects, they always wait until the project finish and then start the evaluation and then to do research. And that doesn't work because you need to document every process. So you want to have also this setting at the beginning. And then we want to change the policy. Okay, every time when we find an issue, we get feedback to local government, and we give some example how the policy was changed. And then we start at the pilot site, and then we say we want to scale up, and this, we want the project to be sustainable. So that's why we work with the government. Say, government, here, this is the plan. This is the model. And then if they buy this project, they think this is workable, they can use the government's funding and the resource to scale up. So at the end, actually, we were invited to the national meeting 2 times to showcase this project. And the government, national, the health officials were sitting there, invite us to present this one. And they want us to, to show to other provinces so they can copy. This is the photo. This is just a few photos to show you how we do this exercise, which is you will also do this yourself when Linda leads this exercise. We find the issue, and then we do solution. So nobody's an expert, okay, in every topics. Okay, we don't know what workers needs. We don't know what the factory's concern. So everybody come together. Okay,
So
Linda.
go back 1 second and I'll make a comment on this. I'll just say that, the nitty-gritty of all this participatory work is really important. So sometimes, we can talk about this and it can seem reasonable, but when you really get down to what happened, it's a lot of stories. So here on the far left, we had a group at the very first workshop we did. As Eve said, you have to have buy-in, because the top-down approach was the approach everybody used. And so here we ask people to write out on the wall all of the things that might affect workers' health. And so in a space of about an hour, they came up with maybe hundreds of things. And then we asked them to sit in small groups, and we broke them up because they are used to, like, if you're from Beijing and you're an important government leader, you're going to be with your people. If you're workers, you'll be with workers. We split them all up into these diverse groups to work together on solutions. So we're going to do one of the exercises that we typically do at these workshops next. And this is very short. This is a kind of design thinking exercise. And teacher-wise, I have a question for you. Has anybody here used design thinking approaches in their work? Show of hands? Okay, great. So we can talk more about teaching techniques and all, but I would suggest taking a look at a website called IDEO, IDEO.org. This is a spin-off from Stanford University. IDEO is an international organization spun off from Stanford University, where design thinking came about from engineers. They have free resources for teachers. So you can get teacher guidebooks with all kinds of exercises. It's a lot of fun to do, and it works in the classroom. All my classes are done with the students taking the lead, and it works in the community too. So here people are taking the lead. Now you're going to take the lead. So what we want you to do is to get into groups of about 6. If you're sitting just a couple of you, just take your chairs over to a close by table. There are 2 sheets of paper on your table. There's pens and things. 1 sheet of paper you're going to write problems, and another sheet of paper write the word solutions. So in 5 minutes, think about all the migrant worker problems that you can come up with. And likewise, think about some solutions too. So we're gonna have 5 minutes for problems. Thank you, everybody, for your creativity and insights. We're going to quickly go around the room and find out through Sono. Just give us a few problems, a few solutions, very quickly, each table.
Yeah, who wants to be first reporting back? I'll move the mic around.
We can go.
Yep.
Oh, wow. Okay. In terms of problems, we have literacy and language barriers, mobility, housing, family separation, interrupted schooling, accumulated stress, environmental shock, readaptation, food, legal immigration status or zoned, and financial literacy. So there's a lot of problems. In terms of solutions, we came out with the idea of having a community center where the people can come in, or the workers can come in, and that would be providing information, language development, childcare, translation if needed, and about healthcare, any kind of issues within the community center for the community. But also we tried to get into the cultural responsiveness of the management. So we decided that it was necessary to have a responsive management program for the culture. That's it.
Yeah, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. A lot of migrant workers, we learned, come from all different parts of China. So it's very, it's a very diverse community of people that the management will have to work with. So thank you. Does anybody have things that didn't come up here that you would like to share as well?
6 months to figure out. You guys are brilliant.
Well, one of the things that a lot of the problems seem to stem from what I understand, China has a very rigid household registration situation in which it's like, if you move away, like you don't get your health benefits and your education. Am I right there? And so, so the children are losing their places in school, and then the workers are losing their health care. And so like some sort of like allowing for more mobility of this like registration would help a lot.
Yeah, thank you. That's kind of where the policy advocacy has to come in. So I had somebody over here.
Talk about going.
We had a few that came up. We were talking about environmental issues like clean water, also just basic nutrition, mental health being a big one. And so we had come up with something similar with the idea of a community center, but actually focusing around a school where a school could provide. We're thinking about here where in some communities kids are sent home with bags of groceries on Friday afternoon, that kind of thing.
All right, here's all of our problems. Lack or no health insurance, and high rate of diabetes, and lack of adequate housing for couples, a lack of low education, not enough child care, fewer rights, the migrants have fewer rights than the residents, and a lack of access to services such as education, dietary needs, probably a low income, very unsafe environments, and experiencing social isolation. And our solutions are we just focused on a couple of different ones. So one of them was to have more access and training through online classes so that they could get better with their health care. Provide funding for housing and doctors and child care, health care. Provide models for socialization to discuss problems. Some government incentives. Corporations to provide resources, spaces, and services. And I believe we discussed the food issue as well. And then education regarding diabetes. So a lot of education.
Thank you so much.
So when we were doing our problems and solutions, we brought up worker safety, but when we're designing a solution, we talked about changing laws and changing how Chinese government is accountable to or creates accountability measures for those businesses. But I don't know. I don't know what those laws are. I don't know what the accountability measures are. So how would, if we are here in the United States and we're trying to come up with solutions and teach our kids to come up with solutions, but they don't even know about the accountability measures, they don't even know about the regulatory laws around worker safety, it's hard for us to create solutions when we don't actually know the information. So I think that's kind of presumptive.
And in regards to that too, the level of mental illness regarding suicide, not only for the students, who don't get into their schools, but also people that are working, like in the different factories, that there's a high level of that. What is that ratio? Is it more women than men? Is it an age group or whatever? That kind of data, how would we get that?
Thank you.
So I think Chinese people are very adaptable and always try to find solution to make the situation work. So I don't know what age group you work with, but I mean, from my understanding, for being born in China, lived till I was 20 something, having my cousins coming from another city to work in Shenzhen when it's first to become a special economic zone. I know that most people, if they're single, they just come and just hope they don't get sick, and they don't usually do when they're young. And then older people, when they do have kids, they actually leave the kids behind. And so actually there's a whole generation of, what's it called? I don't know. Stay behind kids.
Stay behind children.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and then the parents, obviously they won't get health care. They won't get. It's very difficult for them to get any housing either, because their salary won't be able to afford the very expensive houses, especially now in the cities. And then if you're older, you won't come out to work. So I think probably the population that so we identify quite a few things about a problem similar to what you have mentioned, but just like some of the children's education, housing. So Chinese people kind of already come up with their own solution for those things. But then so for young people, they perhaps will feel isolated as well because they are from a different place. So it's just like here. I mean, if somebody is from somewhere else, they don't speak your language, they could be discriminated against as well. So in China, the same thing can happen because people speak a different dialect. And they go to Beijing, they don't speak the same dialect, so you can tell right away, oh, this is someone from somewhere else. 外省人, so the outside province person. So, and then they probably, because of this problem, they probably have some sanitation issue of their dwellings. They may just take them whatever house they can get, whatever apartment they can get. Then they may be also depressed because of issue like that for young people and for old people. So I heard about those people jumping from Hairikang, the buildings. And that was actually already after I came out from China. And I was quite shocked, but it seems that's the reality somehow for the young people who came to the city to work, and when they don't find something to help them, that's what they do. And the solution we came up with is like demolish the hukou registration system, but that's kind of like require a total change of things that has been in China for centuries, and that's we are not sure whether how long would that take. But we come out. I think one thing that perhaps no other table have mentioned is more like I mean the education definitely for their rights and responsibilities. Make sure they understand about that, and I think this part has already improved. When we first, when I lived in Shenzhen, when this first started to have the open policy, people probably didn't know anything about their rights. And then after, over the years, after some fire broke out in places, then I think more laws perhaps already been adopted because of such issues. So we actually mentioned one thing is the business. They should take more responsibilities of providing good health and good, care for the workers, because if they, especially the company from outside of China, if they provide such things for their workers in their own country, then they should also do the same when they go to China, even if the people don't have that understanding that they should have that right yet, but they should provide that just like when it was mentioned about the Coca-Cola would really keep to their high standard when they build their thing. So these are some of the stuff that we have mentioned. So
Thank you.
Any last word from this table here? Anything different? Has all been covered? Okay. So maybe we go back to talking about what we did, what we end up doing.
Yeah, actually at the beginning we were thinking, we want people to talk about, migrant people in this country, what they're facing, because China's so far away. Until you understand more about China, then we can find a solution for them, because we are here so far away. It's just lots of unknown. Actually, let's talk about the migrant people living in the country. Like you said here, but you lay out lots of a similar idea, and we collect all the information, and now we'll talk about what we have done in China, what other migrant workers face. Okay, and then the last lady, you from China, you understand Shenzhen, the protest, all the Korean factory, they have a fire, the Foxconn people jump off the floor. Actually, that was our first initiative motivation, why we want to focus on migrant workers, because of suicide issue. Okay, because of suicide, that's the most vulnerable group.
And that's really important. So they have to learn a whole new set of skills from those that you learned for being a farmer or working with livestock or whatever they might have done before.
And because they are lower education and life skill, so they were forced to take a very unfavorable position, the jobs. Okay, they have no choice. There's no job training, and then they have no sexuality, sexual reproductive health, education, lots of issues. And then, so that's what we're going to deal with. Yeah, the same thing. So that's why for the job training and how to get the career developments is on their agenda. Yes.
I was thinking kind of like the other way as well. Like, yes, they come with different skills, but how can you make those skills valuable to the city? So I don't have an answer.
Yeah.
Maybe they have something that the city could really use.
Yeah, this is a really interesting point that you're making that goes beyond when people typically think about problems and solutions. They're kind of not so far into the future, but very good point here. I just wanted to summarize really quickly that the ideas you came up with in 10 minutes, it can take an entire year using a typical process where, say, experts come in that have no idea about what's going on and try to say that they know the problems, they will come up with a solution. So the top-down approach. Your ideas in 10 minutes, I think, pretty much encapsulate what we heard at many workshops over several years. So I just want to applaud you for the problem insights, the solutions you came up with. There's some new things here that we could take back. I'll just mention one is the online courses. I think that's an extremely good idea.
To the next slide.
Yeah. So we're not going to go over, they had hundreds and hundreds of things, but you covered everything in your comments here, and then there's many hundreds more issues that they covered. The key point is that by using a participatory design process like that, everyone is equal when they sit around a table. Everyone's point of view is important. The group process is very creative. So in the classroom or in the community, in the factory, this works very well. So let's go to the creative things that the workers, the managers, and all the stakeholders that worked on this project came up with. And we're just going to talk about 3 key things here, but each of these factories has customized their own interventions.
Yeah, so and the previous, in the previous slide, which as you can see, It's pretty much, it's a lot of things, you have the layout. It's a similar situation. This is the migrant worker in China, okay? And I think lots of immigrants facing the same problem here. If you don't have a green card, you have no access to local health and social services. And then if you don't have a green card, well, here people can go to public school, but in China, the kids cannot go to public school. So, the residential, the certificates like green card here in China live legally. So even in China, they're all Chinese, but they have a rural ID, which is it's a very different. This is very complicated. You could deal with the rights, the land rights, and the tax, and lots of health and medical issue. So it's a much different kind of the field. But as long as they are holding the rural ID, which hukou, which you mentioned, because hukou is like DMV here, okay? And then a lot of people say, oh, go China, change that hukou, change the registration certificate. It's not that easy. So they've been talking for many, many years, 20-some years, they're still not changing. They're not going to change that system because that's also like DMV here, so they know where you are, okay? It's a very complicated, so we're not going to cover that here. So it's a similar issue. You can see, this is the exercise from the many, many workshops. This is the part of the issue they talk about. So what are we going to do with all this issue? Okay, and then so the next is the intervention. So what do we do with the solution? So there are currently 3 programs right now. First of all, it's the awareness guide, which is this one. They call it's a new citizen, new life. Okay, this is the giving to all this is a migrant worker in the factory, in the zone, and then and I will cover how many what topics we are is covered. And then, so that's the first intervention. Is this a guy was given to all this migrant when they come to this new city, come to the new factory, and all the issue they will face. What are the factors affect their health? And then what should you do? What you do when you have those issues? And where do you go? So this is not dictionary, encyclopedia. It's not something you have a solution. But instead, it's to raise your awareness. Those are factors which will affect your health. And then what can you do and where to go? And we will lead them to the community. So it's a whole community mobilization, and this has a referral in the back, so they know where to go. And the second intervention is wellness house in each factory. Like you say, community center in each place, okay? And then the factory provides the center free, and then the local government actually talk about funding. Each layer, there are about 5 layers of a Chinese government, and each level gives some matching fund. Okay, they support this project. And then so in each factory, they have a wellness house. And then this house is designed by the workers themselves. So they can hang out, they can relax, and they can learn, and they can do training, etc. And some warehouses so fancy right now. We just went there this April. We were surprised. They have a more like a recreational, the ping pong, and they're serious ping pong player there, and they have exercise equipment. So the factory see this as a new way to keep the worker, because the turnover rate is very, very high. Right now, the migration actually is slowing down right now, because instead of going focused in the East Coast area, they are moving to the middle part of China, as Mark would know, because the China want to promote the middle and the west. Okay, so the coast area, the earlier factory actually have a hard time to recruit new workers, because if you have a choice, you don't want to go like thousands of miles away. You want to go to your own provinces and looking for good opportunity and employment. They don't want to leave the kids behind, their parents behind. So right now, it's the middle part of China start to have a manufacture lots of stuff. So so the wellness house is something is to keep your worker. They say it's 工厂精神. They won't have the factory spirit. Mm-hmm. So we want something to attract workers so they can stay. Instead of they have a turnover rate every year to train new people every year, that costs lots of money. And then number 3 is a buddy system. We train the trainer. From the beginning, I mentioned when we do this project, we are just so far away. We are technical assistant people. We're not able to train every single one of them. So at the beginning, we say we want to transfer the capacity to local people, okay? And so they have like a train-the-trainer program, and they have the senior worker train the newcomer. So we call train-the-trainer. This is a very popular term in the international community work. Yeah. So they have a peer education, peer educator. Right now, they have more than 6,000 volunteers to participate in this program, and some are trainers themselves. So this is 3 interventions so far, okay? And the awareness guide. So maybe next one should be the awareness guide. So this is just the picture. Is in every process, every step, we use this participatory approach. They design together, and then so it's not just people top down, the manufacturing worker, the manager says something, or local government. And then, I want to show you this one. Now, this is the logo for the Wellness House. Alina, you want to talk about the logo, the story?
Well, it's an interesting participatory story because what they did is we had some of the partners were people in media, TV and design and so forth, and they came up with a number of logos, and they had some sort of traditional logos that you might, let's say a business might pick. And the workers looked at the choices and they said, no, we don't like those. Those are too stodgy. We want this one. And we said, why? And they said, because for us, that means the worker smiling into the future. And plus, it's fun. So I think the lesson is, if you want to know what a worker thinks and wants, they have to tell you.
Yeah. So let's go back to the awareness guide. What are covered? There are 5 topics, okay? The everyday life, such as in here, say how to apply for the local temporary residential ID card, and how to get your social protection card. There are 2 different things, 社会保障卡, social protection card, which you can have some basic medical care, and also the schooling. Yeah. So here tell you what to do, where to go. And then they have the staying well, talk about the cover nutrition. Somebody mentioned nutrition, and also the language, and also that's just exercise and eating well, and then also like social protection, how to apply for the medical insurance, and how to apply for the pregnancy insurance. It's all the basic things, they can take care of themselves. And then we also have very important chapter talking about reproductive health, sexual and reproductive health. And we did mention gender. Okay, we did mention homosexuality, which is, I remember when we raised this up, they look at me and say, wait a minute, what are you talking about? I said, just cover that. So we have another people working with the worker to develop this the gender issue. And also talk about the female, how to protect yourself. You raise awareness, how to deal with the sexual harassment, and how to speak for your rights. And also particularly because in lots of this manufacturing, they have lots of discrimination against women. Okay, once you're pregnant, you're out of the workplace. Even you want to come back, you're not going to keep your same position. So they lost lots of seniority, and they lost their rights. So in this book, we'll cover that. And all this issue is not that we decide. It's all coming from tons of surveys and interviews and the research. And we narrow down to those few topics. And the family development is talking about the kids from the beginning, the toddler, to all the way to aging, to taking care of the aging parents of the issue. So in China, family development is a very popular term right now. Because since China opened up to the 2 children policy, so no more tight population control anymore. So they are taking care about they're moving to the next stage of the family development. Instead of a population one-child policy control, it's about the development. So China is moving ahead. They are moving. They're thinking that's the stage. They need to take care of the harmonious society, take care of the aging issue, take care of the young kids issue. So that's all in this book, and was given to every new migrant worker one. So when they come to join the factory, and everyone was given one, so they know exactly what to do, where to go. And then those money are paid by the factory, because they know there's something they can show off. They even give this to the worker who go home for the Spring Festival, because bring home so you can recruit more people, to hire, to invite your villagers to come with us. This is it. Yeah. So at first they didn't, want to give them money. They don't know. They don't see any benefit. But at the end they join. So the factory will adopt. I will adopt 10,000 copies of that because it's cheap to print each one copies.
And I'll just make one comment that this book also picks up on some comments of the workers and managers and other people that for workers without lots of education, they can understand the information they're getting from the government that might be written at like a professional level. So this is written according to the principles of what we call health literacy, at a lower level. It's tested by workers to make sure they can understand what the terms are, and there's a lot of design features that make it easy for people to read. Yeah. So we used all those principles as part of our technical assistance.
Yeah. I think we did three field testing about the literacy.
2 o'clock.
So. Okay, good. Okay, so this is the warehouse. Just give you a picture. In each factory, they can be very creative, whatever they want to do. But this is a few shots of the warehouse house look like. And then so the worker, they join the conversation, the peer education. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to show a video.
Yeah.
We're going to show a video, 5 minutes video to document this is the whole, the whole project. Can we show the video?
This is something that was created by
我是宿迁的，来到常州之后听不懂常州话，也不知道去哪里面能够进修，然后觉得很孤单。
我来这2年了，1年只能回家1次，每天在厂里的车间和宿舍2点一线，生活很无聊。
平时有很多身子健康方面的知识，然后不好意思问，然后也不懂。
我刚来常州，都很多玩的地方都不太了解。
我不是常州人，来到常州打工啊，感觉到很孤单似的。
像这种发展中企业、城市的企业来说，招工比较困难。然后外来工的管理上面嘛，因为由于这种原因的话，流动率也比较高，新员工培训成本太高。
都是外来工，相对来说，他们的由于来的比较贫困的地区，就是健康知识比较贫乏，所以对于特别是生殖健康的一些知识的了解，还有遇到这方面的困扰呢，都不知道到哪里去。然后呢，因为自身相对来说造成了一些身体的一些影响，对我们企业整个生产和经营造成了一些困扰。
由此，2012年，中国计生协与美国开拓者国际组织在江苏常州合作开展康健计划项目。
我们项目创新的使用了参与式的方法，一直被贯穿始终，采用的是让打工者从下到上参与式管理的服务模式。
外来工参与是项目开始的基础，所有数据与事实依据都来自常州外来工群体。项目首先在常州高新技术开发区启动，依托美国加州大学伯克利分校公共卫生学院和原南京人口干部管理学院，对高新区5禁区1114名企业外来工就他们的生活工作状况、社会网络圈、服务需求等方面开展基线调查，形成常州市外来工社会管理与生殖健康服务状况调查报告、常州企业外来工生活状况基线调查专题研究报告，为项目研究和提高社会治理能力提供科学依据。项目基于外来工参与，提出了3位一体推进康健项目的工作思路。项目创新打造康健驿站，开发康健手册和建设志愿者康健服务队。康健驿站的建设充分体现了外来工参与。通过多次座谈会，外来工在康健驿站的设计、规划等各方面都提出了自己的需求和意见，并确立了2种康健驿站服务模式：企业康健驿站和社区康健驿站。康健驿站是集健康宣传倡导、休闲娱乐为一体的多功能室，分为心理疏导交流、图书药具展示、运动休闲宣教、康健主题展示、生活服务引导等多个领域。目前项目已建立了10个康健驿站。
我喜欢在这里休息、看书、运动。我一下班就在这玩，觉得这里跟我的常州的家一样，我很喜欢这里。
康健手册的编写完全按照参与式的方法，由专家、志愿者、外来工共同参与编写。外来工多次参与康健手册试读，并且提出了自己的看法。 手册包括日常生活篇、健康生活篇、社会保障篇、家庭计划篇、家庭发展篇5大篇，28个服务主题。手册普及生理和心理健康、劳动保障等知识。目前，康健手册已编印7000册，免费发到试点企业和社区外来工手中。
我学到了很多健康方面的知识，然后也学到了很多解决问题的方法，我觉得挺适合常州的，而且很好，感觉很实用的。
项目在外来工参与下组建了志愿者康健服务队，项目组采用国际先进理念，由外方项目官员和专家介绍美国加州实习康健项目的模式和经验，先后举办了生育关怀、关爱流动人口项目能力建设、康健计划项目能力建设、康健计划同伴教育等一系列培训班，培训企业、社区志愿者近500余人，增添了服务企业外来工的新生力量。我们相继引入香港乐施会等组织加入常州项目，并签订合作协议，共同推进康健项目。在项目推进过程中，中国计生协领导、美国开拓者组织项目官员多次来场指导和培训。
从我们参加这个项目的我们的新市民朋友，试读这本书对他的评价，我觉得他是非常成功的。它不仅是在我们的生活、工作和我们的整个过程，在常州的各个过程当中，会有所帮助，而且它会在大家的试读、应用的过程中，能够得到不断的完善，能给我们后面的一些朋友到常州来生活、工作，能够提供更进一步的借鉴和帮助。
Up this section, but we want to talk about a little bit what we have achieved, and also the challenge and the next step. People can read this one, so I don't need to write that. But the comment I heard was very stick to my mind. It's the Family Planning Commission. She said. And then she moved to work for Women's Federation, and she said, "Oh, Teacher Lee," she said, I'm taking over this participatory approach to my new assignment right now because I know it works, and then it solved me lots of problems, So I just want to share this with you. Okay, next slide. Next slide. And then
we're inviting now. We're learning so much from our colleagues in China. We're inviting them here to come and share ideas with us about education, working in the community, all of their ideas. So they are coming here frequently to be our colleagues and our teachers, which is, what we definitely wanted here.
Yeah. So this is the next step, the mental health. Okay, it's still ongoing issues, and they need to train more qualified counselor, which is very, very hard. Yeah, it's the mental health issue is still very important. So continue. So our job is not complete, okay? And we still have that thing. So we still move, push for this forward. But the other very positive for this project is, right now this wellness project is become the regular activity in Changzhou City and has a secure budget for that. So I think for that, I think we made it, which means for every new factory, we'll get 10,000 yuan from the local government to help them to set up, and then they can run out. So it becomes regular. No matter who come, who go, even we're not going, the new mayor, they're not going to change the plan. So this project is very sustainable.
Yeah, so, in closing, we just say that the participatory process, it really works, whether it's in your classroom or in Changzhou, or any place in the world that we have tried it. It's easy. Well, maybe it's not so easy, but once it gets going, it has a life of its own, and it just takes off and sustains itself. So thank you very much, and any Few questions?
We have 5 minutes.
A lot of young couples, they have stay behind children and parents. And if they are not able to be united with their family members, one of the workers mentioned that he only gets to go home once a year. And that's terrible. I don't know how one can plan family development based on these difficulties.
Yeah, left behind children is a big issue. It's a many international group working with the Chinese government because of the schooling system, which means that the children can go with their parents to adopted city, but they can only finish to junior high school. If they want to go to the college or whatever, they have to go back to their hometown because they have quota system. So in that case, the parents, they either stay in the city or they move back. That's another turnover rate. Okay, that's out of the schooling. And or, or the migrant worker, the students, when they come to new cities, and some cities, every city is different. Some are welcoming the new migrant kids. They can go to regular public school. Some they cannot. So the migrant people, they form their own migrant school, but they couldn't really hire very qualified teacher to teach their kids, and they have to pay for that tuition. Yeah, so migrant, the schooling is an issue. Now go back to the social protection card. Okay, social protection card. It's so in some city, if they are rich, the kids are entitled. They have a right to go to local school for the protection card, and also they can buy local insurance, and they can buy housing, the rental. So pretty much the migrant worker need a 2 ID. Go to a new city. One is the temporary, the residential ID, the other social protection card. And that gives you insurance, the medical, the housing, the schooling, or other social services. You need that card.
And it varies from city
to city. From city to city. Some cities are rich, and then they provide more services to the migrant worker. But some cities are not, and then you have very limited access to the public services.
So one interesting thing that happened in this project is even when we just had a couple factories, we have 28 right now, and maybe more, but when we just had like 3 or 4, the workers kept saying, we moved here so our children could have better education, and they go to these migrant schools that aren't very good. So they pressed the government officials. They said, look, you want workers, we want schools. And what that did was make a big citywide change to open up the regular higher quality schools to the migrant workers. It was because of the workers working through this participatory project, using their power to advocate for what they wanted. And so that's more and more something happening.
To follow up on what you're saying, did that mean that they built big more schools? Because I'm just going to assume that if it's anything like here, more kids that come to school creates a problem within the schools, because then all of a sudden you don't have enough teachers. Did that prompt the government or the cities to build bigger schools, more schools?
China had a one-child policy, remember? Okay, so not too many children. Okay, but right now, but they're allowed to have 2 kids, but they're still, only 2 years. They just opened 2 years old. So they build more school, and then so the local school actually they couldn't get enough students to go to enroll.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because of one.
Right, but Changzhou is I don't know if because of this project or something. So there's a lot of awareness for migrant worker. So right now we just went there this April, and they said, oh, right now they can all go to the public school now. Okay, they can all come to the school. But there also another side. I also heard the comment says, but their kids, because they are so behind, right? They're not used to the the surrounding education. So some they have a hard time to catch up. Yeah, because they came from the rural. But that was just the temporary things. But anyway, the Changzhou city say they are open to the migrant workers. Yeah.
And in some of the factories, the workers actually, we went to this one factory, and at the very early part of the project, we paid a lot of attention to the managers, because it has to be win-win, can't just be workers winning. So the manager said, look, we're losing a lot of workers in the summer. We don't know why. Of course, they weren't asking them. But when the project came along, then the workers said, look, we leave in the summer because a lot of us have children. We live in these small apartments, and there's no school in the summer. What are our kids going to do? They can't stay alone in the apartments, so they would leave and go back home. And they decided in their factory they wanted to build a summer school. So we've seen several really nice summer schools. They wanted to design the curriculum. They wanted to have good teachers. And these are really nice schools where, you know, we would want our kids to go. So, you know, the worker power and creativity is quite amazing here.
Just a bit of a comment. Also, I think by developing the factories and getting a program like this where the workers are actually happier and really willing to work, by taking the booklet to their original places, they can bring some of their friends and family to the company and then not feel as lonely anymore or as out of their own group. So their family members can also come back into the city.
Yeah, and that one of the things they've done is to in their factories to form groups, cultural subgroups around people who speak their language and are from their culture, and do a lot of things like that. Also to use computer hookups to be able to see, you were mentioning internet back here, be able to see their families and their children that are left behind. They said, we make computers, but we don't have them. So they got computers set up, and now they can real time see their families, talk to their children. You know, that's a big deal.
I have one other question. So I noticed on all the video and all the images that most of the working population, the migrant population, was very young. They were awful. There was only one
under 30
older
years old.
Yes.
Yep, yes.
So what's happening with the older generation? Is a part of the wellness program attempting or eventually going to attempt to address that, because they will need care and they will have their own issues.
Yes. You know, it's a cover. It's a cover there. But you know, the tendency is, you know, all those new migrant workers, actually, you know, the young girl, they left this village before the boys, because in China, the male-dominated society, girl went out to make money to support their brother go to school. Okay, people in China, they already know that. You know, so lots of young girls, they left the home very early, 16 years old in the earliest one, and between this all born born after 1980s. Yeah, so the average age is about is between. Anyway, all below 30 years old for the younger people. The older people, you know, if they go there for, in China, the migration is going by wave, different stage. Okay, a long time ago it's older people. Right now it's the younger people, because they want to go to big city looking for opportunity and for some exciting life, because going to the field in a home is no fun. You know, they leave the city. So the older younger, you know, if they move to some place for after certain years, they stay. They start their family there. They buy the house. So the worker, actually, we did address to the middle age, but mainly it's because of the majority younger people, 65%, under 30 years old. But wellness do address all the issue. It's a whole life issue. Yeah.
So we have to wrap up now, but thank you very much. Thank you for your ideas. Participation is power. Okay.
Thank you, Linda. Thank you, Eve. A really fascinating discussion.